The Settings page in MOVEit Transfer contains the Appearance, Security Policy, Ad hoc Transfer, and miscellaneous sections. Options configured from the Settings page will affect the organization as a whole, as opposed to specific user or group settings. For that reason, it is important to be careful when updating these settings in a production environment. The Appearance section controls the informational windows such as the tech support details and security notifications, as well as the sign-on banner. It also contains settings that manage the look and feel branding of the site. Display options allow admins to create a link to customer help pages online and to manage regulatory and compliance settings. Notification configurations is also handled as part of the Appearance section, along with the default home folder path and language selection options. The Security Policy section covers your password requirements, user authentication options, user settings, remote access rules, and your content scanning or DLP configurations. Your ad hoc transfer settings control which users are allowed to send packages, who they are allowed to send to, how unregistered recipients are handled, how much data can be sent, what kind of files may be sent. It also manages how long your packages remain in the system and allows admins to delegate many of these settings to group or user level. The Miscellaneous section contains one setting of note, the Audit Log Retention Policy. The default is 30 days, and it is the recommended value. There are two major factors that you must consider when adjusting settings in the Security section. First, what is the most secure configuration you can achieve? The second is what will be the easiest and simplest of these configurations for the users in your system. If your security rules are somewhat relaxed and the users are less technically savvy, then your security rules should reflect that. Somewhere in between these answers is where your optimal security settings lie. Password security is one of the biggest risks your system can face, but it is also one of the easiest risks to alleviate. You can choose the password length and complexity at a level you require. A common selection here would be to require a strong password of at least 8 characters. Admins also have the option of requiring users to change their password every so often, and the system allows that through the Age and History page. For that particular setting, enabling it is the most important thing. The value typically varies from one organization to the next. In the Password section is the Permissions. Password permission management includes defining how passwords are generated and delivered to new or existing users. It also covers when and where users may reset their own passwords. We recommend engaging the user lockout policy in your MOVEit transfer system. Typical configurations is to lock out a user who has unsuccessfully attempted to log in 5 times in 3 minutes. Do not forget to set that same user the ability to be unlocked 30 to 60 minutes later so they can attempt to log in again and conduct business. With a fresh installation of MOVEit Transfer, it will utilize its own database for authentication. The application is capable of integrating multiple other sources, such as Microsoft Active Directory through LDAP. Transfer also supports Radius and WS Trust. The most common of these is the Microsoft Active Directory authentication through LDAP. The Active Directory authentication has the ability to auto-generate accounts in MOVEit Transfer. These accounts can be created as a clone of a template account, and it can be determined when these accounts are created. They can be created only when they log into the system for the first time, and that is recommended the setting as it prevents unused accounts out of the system. The other option is to auto-create any account that is allowed to log in based on their Active Directory group membership. You can also leverage group mask and group check masks at the bottom of the authentication method configuration page to control which Active Directory groups have access to the transfer system and to the integrated Active Directory group membership with MOVEit Transfer Group membership. User expiration is also managed the user authentication section and is something that is regularly overlooked when configuring a new system. In most systems, it is recommended to have an expiration policy for all accounts. The most commonly utilized expiration option is to expire accounts in a certain number of days after last activity. Once a user reaches the expiration criteria, their account will be automatically expired and set for deletion. Deletion occurs, by default, 7 days after expiration. This value is also configurable in User Expiration page. You may view and configure the default remote access rules. These setting controls what IP addresses and ranges are allowed or not allowed to access the transfer system. It is common to set an overall access policy on this page, but to override that policy for specific users is a common practice. Typically, the settings on the user profile are more restrictive than the organization policy. For example, if you have a file admin account that has an internal MOVEit automation system and uses it to access MOVEit Transfer, it is more secure to limit access for the account to a specific IP address. There's also a whitelist option within the default remote access rules. In MOVEit Transfer, it is called the trusted host. If there is an IP address that is shared by more than one user, it is a good idea to put that IP in the trusted host list. That way, a single user cannot lock other users out of the system with too many failed login attempts. The IP lockout rules are configured by the sysadmin account. By default, IP switching is not allowed by MOVEit Transfer. If you have a user who is coming through a proxy or a firewall and that device assigns their IP address, it may also change that IP during the session. If that happens and the default setting has not changed, their session will be invalid and they will be taken back to the login. For each of the interfaces available in MOVEit Transfer, there is a section of settings that manages who may access and how. These security policies are very similar. They have allow or do not allow options for each method and can require specific methods of authentication. For example, you could require that users connect via SSH to have present a username, password, and SSH client key to successfully authenticate, while FTPS connections could be configured to require client certificate for authentication in place of a password. Content scanning is enabled or disabled from the security policy section. The connection and configuration of your antivirus or data loss prevention solutions must be done by a sysadmin account user. You can add additional rule sets to apply to different types of users beyond the system defaults. Clicking the Add DLP rule set to create a variety of ways that you want to handle files that violate one or more of the DLP server policies. Apply these at the user class level or individual user level.